Mining is one of the oldest professions in the world, it seems. In recent times, particularly with the influence of the Industrial Revolution, the importance of mines has increased. Among the countless professions in the world, mining may be one of the hardest in terms of working conditions. It is a very dangerous profession for human health and life, and when necessary precautions are not taken, mining accidents can turn into a complete disaster and tears if mines are not properly regulated. The health and safety of workers, public oversight, and the responsibility of the employer become crucial. Worker rights, worker law, working conditions, work schedule, and work health and safety are not only concerned with workers, employers, and labor law specialists, but everyone. Because everyone who earns money, provides for their livelihood and sustains their life is directly or indirectly affected by issues concerning workers. In the modern world, after the abolition of slavery and the Industrial Revolution in England, the field of labor law and workers' rights has started to develop. When it comes to the historical development of worker-employer relationships in the area of worker rights, one of the first works that come to mind is undoubtedly Émile Zola's novel Germinal. In our fourth video, we tried to introduce you to Germinal. Enjoy watching. Germinal is the 13th novel in Émile Zola's 20-volume series Les Rugen Macquart. Often considered Zola's masterpiece and one of the most significant novels in the French tradition, the novel, an uncompromisingly harsh and realistic story of a coal miners' strike in northern France in the 1860s, has been published and translated in over 100 countries. It has also inspired 5 film adaptations and 2 television productions. Germinal was written between April 1884 and January 1885. It was first serialized between November 1884 and February 1885 in the periodical Gil Blas, then in March 1885 published as a book. The title refers to the name of a month of the French Republican calendar, a spring month. Germin is a Latin word which means seed. The novel describes the hope for a better future that seeds amongst the miners. As the final lines of the novel read, men were springing forth, a black avenging army, germinating slowly in the furrows, growing towards the harvests of the next century, and their germination would soon overturn the earth. The novel's central character is Étienne Lantier, previously seen in L'Assommoir, 1877, and originally to have been the central character in Zola's Murder on the Trains thriller La Bête Humaine, 1890, before the overwhelmingly positive reaction to Germinal persuaded him otherwise. The young migrant worker arrives at the forbidding coal mining town of Monceau in the bleak area of the far north of France to earn a living as a miner. Sacked from his previous job on the railways for assaulting a superior, Étienne befriends the veteran miner Mahieu, who finds him somewhere to stay and gets him a job pushing the carts down the pit. Étienne is portrayed as a hard-working idealist, but also a naive youth. Zola's genetic theories come into play as Étienne is presumed to have inherited his Macquart ancestors' traits of hot-headed impulsiveness and an addictive personality capable of exploding into rage under the influence of drink or strong passions. Zola keeps his theorizing in the background, and Étienne's motivations are much more natural as a result. He embraces socialist principles, reading large amounts of working-class movement literature and fraternizing with Séverine, a Russian anarchist and political émigré who has also come to Monceau to seek a living in the pits, and Rasseneur, a pub owner. Étienne's simplistic understanding of socialist politics and their rousing effect on him are very reminiscent of the rebel Sylvre in the first novel in the cycle, La Fortune de Rugen, 1871. While this is going on, Étienne also falls for Mahieu's daughter Catherine, also employed pushing carts in the mines, and he is drawn into the relationship between her and her brutish lover Chavel, a prototype for the character of Buteau in Zola's later novel La Terra, 1887. The complex tangle of the miners' lives is played out against a backdrop of severe poverty and oppression, as their working and living conditions continue to worsen throughout the novel. Eventually, pushed to breaking point, the miners decide to strike, and Étienne, now a respected member of the community and recognized as a political idealist, becomes the leader of the movement. While the anarchist Séverine preaches violent action, the miners and their families hold back, their poverty becoming ever more disastrous, until they are sparked into a ferocious riot, the violence of which is described in explicit terms by Zola, as well as providing some of the novelist's best and most evocative crowd scenes. The rioters are eventually confronted by police and the army that repress the revolt in a violent and unforgettable episode. Disillusioned, the miners go back to work, blaming Etienne for the failure of the strike. Then, Souverain sabotages the entrance shaft of one of the Monceau pits, trapping Etienne, Catherine and Chavel at the bottom. The ensuing drama and the long wait for rescue are among some of Zola's best scenes, and the novel draws to a dramatic close. After Chavel is killed by Etienne, Catherine and Etienne are finally able to be lovers before Catherine dies in his arms. Etienne is eventually rescued and fired, but he goes on to live in Paris with Pluchart, an organizer for the International. The title, Germinal, is drawn from the springtime 7th month of the French Revolutionary calendar and is meant to evoke imagery of germination, new growth, and fertility. Accordingly, Zola ends the novel on a note of hope and one that has provided inspiration to socialist and reformist causes of all kinds throughout the years since its first publication. Beneath the blazing of the sun, in that morning of new growth, the countryside rang with song, as its bellies swelled with a black and avenging army of men, germinating slowly in its furrows, growing upwards in readiness for harvests to come, until one day soon their ripening would burst open the earth itself. By the time of Zola's death, the novel had come to be recognized as his undisputed masterpiece, too. At his funeral, crowds of workers gathered, cheering the cortège with shouts of Germinal. Germinal! Since then, the book has come to symbolize working-class causes, and to this day retains a special place in French mining town folklore. Zola was always very proud of Germinal and was always keen to defend its accuracy against accusations of hyperbole and exaggeration from the conservatives, or of slander against the working classes from the socialists. His research had been typically thorough, especially the parts involving lengthy observational visits to northern French mining towns in 1884, such as witnessing the after-effects of a crippling miners' strike firsthand at Anzin or actually going down a working coal pit at Denain. The mine scenes are especially vivid and haunting as a result. Tom Wolfe described one incident from Zola's research, Free. In 1884, Zola went down into the mines at Anzin to do the documentation for what was to become the novel Germinal. Posing as a secretary for a member of the French Chamber of Deputies, he descended into the pits wearing his city clothes, his frock coat, high stiff collar, and high stiff hat. This appeals to me for reasons I won't delay you with, and carrying a notebook and pen. One day Zola and the miners who were serving as his guides were 150 feet below the ground when Zola noticed an enormous workhorse, a percheron, pulling a sled piled with coal through a tunnel. Zola asked, "How do you get that animal in and out of the mine every day?" At first, the miners thought he was joking. Then they realized he was serious, and one of them said, "Mr. Zola, don't you understand? That horse comes down here once, when he's a colt, barely more than a foal, and still able to fit into the buckets that bring us down here. That horse grows up down here. He grows blind down here after a year or two, from the lack of light. He hauls coal down here until he can't haul it anymore, and then he dies down here, and his bones are buried down here." When Zola transfers this revelation from the pages of his documentation notebook to the pages of Germinal, it makes the hair on your arms stand on end. You realize, without the need of amplification, that the horse is the miners themselves, who descend below the face of the earth as children and dig coal down in the pit until they can dig no more and then are buried, often literally, down there. A sensation upon original publication, it is now by far the best-selling of Zola's novels, both in France and internationally. A number of modern translations are currently in print and widely available.